after reviewing a presidential system where there is separation of powers and a parliamentary system where there's no separation of powers, even though both systems are democratic, I thought I would show you sort of a hybrid system and the problems that there might be in it, but also the good aspects of it, often referred to as a semi-presidential system. And it's also the system that my favorite country in the world, Russia, uses. This is what the Constitution defines as the de jure structure of the Russian government. However, we all know that in practice it doesn't actually act this way, but idealistically this is the way that it's supposed to act. And idealistically it's a good example to show us how a semi-presidential system functions. So we have the people, and they directly elect the representatives of the State Duma, which is, again, from an American perspective, like the House of Representatives. They also directly elect the members of their regional Dumas, which make up the local governments of the oblasts, which are like the states in Russia. And the regional Dumas appoint the members of the upper house of the Russian Federal Assembly into the Federation Council. The Federation Council is sort of like the Senate. Like how the Constitution originally defined the legislature in the United States, Russia still uses this form today, that the state governments appointed senators and the people directly elected the congressmen in the lower house, but indirectly elected the senators. That's exactly how it works in Russia still. Now, the people also directly elect the president, who acts as the head of state of the Russian Federation. Now, it's called the Russian Federation because it's a federal system, and a federal system means that the local governments have a certain amount of autonomy from the national government. The United States implements this system, and that state governments are able to implement forms of autonomy and function independently to a certain extent from the national government, but they still recognize their international sovereignty, the federal government of the United States. In the United Kingdom, it's a unitary system, in that the national government, any law that they make automatically trickles down to the local governments and to the local parliaments of Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales. We're going to see that in Russia, even though on paper it's a federal system, it doesn't exactly function that way. Getting back on track here, the people directly elect the president, who's the chief executive and the head of state of the Russian Federation. He appoints the Council of Ministers, which is like the cabinet. It was just, in Russia, they just wanted to refer to it as something different. He also acts as the commander-in-chief of the military, and he appoints the judges on the Constitutional Court, which acts as an independent judiciary, much like the United States Supreme Court does. Now here's where it gets kind of interesting. The president also appoints commissioners on these areas called federation districts. In Russia, it's strange, but a group of oblasts are organized into districts, economic districts and federation districts. And what would be considered the democratic and presidential equivalent of a viceroy is in charge of this group of oblasts. And that commissioner of that federation district makes sure that all of those local dumas comply with what the national government wants to do. Also, these federation districts control what the Federation Council is able to do, because the regional dumas have representation and have control over what the Federation Council does because it's a federal system. So with this practice in mind, it makes it function more like a unitary state rather than it does a federal system, even though it's a federal system on paper. It's just another level of bureaucracy, which is what makes the Russian government very interesting. Also, we can look back and see that even though this system is democratic with proportional representation, it seems that it's designed to have power boil down to the president. We can see this because Russia also has a prime minister that's appointed by the president. Unlike many parliamentary systems where a prime minister's power derives out of the legislature and he's appointed by the lower house, this is the only semi-parliamentary system in the world where a prime minister doesn't have to be a member of parliament but can be any citizen of the Russian Federation. The president appoints him, and the State Duma has to comply with what the president wants. But then again, if the State Duma doesn't agree with the president's choice, the president can just dissolve the Duma until they agree with him. So, Russia's a very good example of how governments function de facto versus de jure. And I think it was a perfect example to use as a hybrid system of how certain governments implement different things that make them function in the light that people want them to see in, and how they function in action.